You paid extra for the balcony, ocean view, king bed, room service on a card by the door. It's half the reason you booked this cruise. Several decks below you, someone who works on this ship is asleep in a windowless metal box the size of a single parking space. And they're sharing it. Same ship, same week. Two completely different worlds, stacked on top of each other, on purpose. This is the room the cruise line never puts in the brochure. Let me show you inside. Here's the first thing people get wrong. They assume the crew got stuck with tiny rooms because the company is cheap. It isn't cheapness, it's real estate. There are three things going on down there. Why the rooms are built the way they are, which isn't the reason you think. The hidden hierarchy that decides who gets a window and who doesn't. And the part that stops people cold, why thousands of them fight to live like this. Contract after contract. By the end, you'll never look at your cabin steward the same way again. So start with the obvious question. Why are the crew rooms so small? A cruise ship is a sealed metal box that has to float. Every cubic foot below the waterline gets fought over by engineers, designers, and accountants. And the good space, the space with windows, balconies, and an ocean view, gets sold to you for thousands of dollars a week. So crew space gets engineered the way everything else on a ship gets engineered, deliberately for density. The most people, in the least valuable space, packed as close to the work as possible. That's the windowless core, deep in the hull, where the only light is a fluorescent tube and the only view is a steel wall. To get down there, you take a road. On many large ships, one main crew corridor runs almost the full length of the vessel on a low deck. Every cook, cleaner, engineer, and dancer passes through it dozens of times a day. The crew named it after the busiest highway they could think of, Interstate 95. Its own traffic, its own rush hours, its own rule about which side you walk on. And the passenger sipping a cocktail 2 decks up has no idea it is there. But the road isn't the interesting part. The rooms are. A typical entry-level crew cabin runs about 100 to 150 square feet, smaller than a parking space, and it is shared. 2 people, sometimes 4, in bunk beds. Each person gets a narrow bed, a locker, maybe a corner of a shared desk, and a bathroom the size of an airplane lavatory, often shared with the cabin next door through a connecting door you did not ask for. No window, no porthole. Down on the lower decks, you genuinely cannot tell if it is noon or midnight without checking your phone. And here's a detail that catches people off guard. 2 roommates often work opposite shifts. One runs breakfast and lunch, the other runs dinner and the late bar. They will share a 120 square foot room for 6 months and barely be awake in it at the same time. The cabin never really empties. It just swaps bodies, like a relay race. But not everyone lives like this. And this is where the ship shows you what it really is. Because below decks isn't one community, it's a hierarchy, carved straight into the steel. Cabin size, occupancy, and privacy tend to follow rank, though exactly where each cabin sits varies from ship to ship. The lowest-ranking crew, galley hands, cleaners, dishwashers, are usually deepest in and can be 3 or 4 to a cabin with no window. Move up to the waitstaff and cabin stewards, and you're more likely down to 2. Some performers, specialists, and supervisors get a single or single-share cabin. And the senior officers live in a different world entirely. A single cabin with an actual window, sometimes a small sitting area. The captain and top officers get suites that wouldn't look out of place on the decks you paid for. So, the higher your rank, the more daylight you literally get to see. On a cruise ship, your job title isn't just on your name badge, it's measured in how far you sleep from the bottom of the ocean. Now, you're probably thinking this sounds bleak. Windowless rooms, shared bunks, opposite shifts, a stranger across the bathroom door. But here's the part almost nobody on the outside ever finds out. The crew don't just sleep down there, they have an entire hidden city, and most of it is off-limits to every paying guest on board. Branching off that corridor is a parallel version of the ship you booked. A crew mess, the cafeteria where everyone eats, often cooking food from a dozen home countries at once. Because on one ship you might have people from the Philippines, India, Indonesia, South Africa, Romania, and 20 other places sitting down to dinner together. And then there's the part nobody expects. The crew bar. A real bar tucked behind crew-only doors, where a beer that costs $10 on the pool deck costs $1 or $2. After a 12-hour shift, this is where the ship actually comes alive. And by most accounts, the the crew parties are a lot wilder than anything happening in the passenger nightclub above. It doesn't stop there. A crew gym, a shop for toiletries and snacks, internet lounges, and on bigger ships, a crew-only sun deck tucked at the very back, out of sight, the one place off-duty staff can finally see the ocean they've been sailing across for months. A whole self-contained town, sealed inside a luxury resort running 24 hours a day, completely invisible to the people it exists to serve. Which brings us to the last thing, the one that genuinely surprises people. Because on paper, this should be miserable. Contracts run 4 to 8 months, often without anything resembling a normal weekend. The weeks run 70 hours or more. You live in a metal box with no window, far from home, sharing a bathroom with someone you'd never met before you signed on. So why do so many of them come back? Contract after contract, year after year. Ask a crew member who's done 5 of them whether they'd trade it for a normal 9 to 5 back home. And a surprising number will tell you no. Part of it is the people. When you live and work beside the same group for months, sealed off from the outside world, something forms down there that's hard to explain to anyone who hasn't lived it. They talk about it like family. Friendships across a dozen nationalities, made in a place no tourist will ever see. People meet the person they'll marry on I-95. And part of it is the world itself. The work is brutal, but the office, on a good day, is a balcony over the Caribbean, or Alaska, or the Mediterranean. They wake up somewhere new. They send money home that changes their family's life. And they belong to something the rest of us only ever visit. That doesn't make the conditions easy. And it doesn't mean every crew member feels the same way about ship life. Some love it, some are just there for the money. Some have a hard time of it. But it's why this isn't only a story about hardship. For a lot of them, the trade is worth repeating. Long hours, little privacy, and months away from home. In exchange for money, opportunity, travel, and a community almost no job on land can give you. So, the next time you're up on that pool deck, drink in your hand, watching the coastline slide by. Remember there's a second ship beneath your feet. A whole hidden city stacked deep in the hull with its own highway, its own bar, its own ranks, and its own family. Now it's your turn. Have you ever worked on a cruise ship or known someone who did? What's the one thing about life below decks that would shock people? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. And if this gave you a whole new way of seeing that floating resort, hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.